And if you decide to go with this route, I really hope that you invested in Bitcoin early, or you have some mining farm or another form of passive income, because you'll be way too sleepy to work, and during your waking hours you'll either be eating or training or doing injections, right? Vigorous Steve here, back with the Vigorous Q&A for all of your bodybuilding related questions. Man, it's been a while since I've said that. I used to do the Vigorous Q&A at the start of this YouTube channel, collect questions from Instagram, and then answer all of them and release 2 videos a day. Then I switched to the Vigorous Q&A live, but unfortunately the chat turned into a giant mess of repetitive questions and spam and whatnot. So here we are, we're going to restart the old format. You guys can ask your questions on the Vigorous Q&A on Instagram when I release that post on either Saturday or Sunday. I posted the latest one yesterday. So all of the questions that are currently posted there, I will answer. Well, I'll select the best questions. I won't answer all of them because there's 65 comments there. I'll select the best questions, answer them in about 10 to 15 minutes in separate YouTube videos as the second video of the day. So hopefully this way I can keep up with 2 videos per day. One informative video where I have to prepare for, right, a deep dive, so to say. And then the second video will be answering your questions as part of the Vigorous Q&A. In this video, we're going to answer 2 questions. The first one is from Dr. Boxman, how to eat for mass. Tricks for hitting calories, macros, and strategies, and how to adhere to big diets for guys with not so big appetite. And we're going to combine this question with a question from RNR 2057. That probably stands for rest and relaxation in 2057. That's a long time to wait to get a little bit of rest. His or her question is appetite increasing compounds, mirtazapine, which is a antidepressant, and Megestrol Acetate, which is actually an anti-cancer medication and also prescribed in muscle wasting diseases. So on the topic of raising one's appetite, let's address your digestion first. Now, I'm not going to waste a lot of time in this video talking about digestion. I already have 2 videos where I tell you guys to optimize your digestion, to fix your gut after a cycle consisting of oral steroids and perhaps having a lot of acid reflux during that time. And another video on how to optimize your digestion for a perfect vacuum. Please watch those videos when you're done with this one. They discuss anything ranging from elimination diets to how to structure your diet, not drinking water with meals, supplements like apple cider vinegar or TUDCA or bile acid to help with digestion and the passing of stool, which are all very important when you're eating large quantities of foods, right? How to structure your vegetables in relation to your protein, carbs, and fat sources. And of course, how to heal your intestinal tract with peptides like LL37, which is a natural antibiotic, and how to repopulate your gut microbiome using BPC-157 orally to heal your stomach lining and using glutamine in this process. Those 2 videos already contain a ton of information, so please watch those when you're done with this one. To answer Dr. Boxman first, if you want to eat big, you have to space out all of your calories over several servings. Some of those meals are going to be liquid. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to get a weight gainer with a ton of sugar and cheap amino acids. You might have to blend your meals. So that means you might have to blend your chicken with oatmeal or cream of rice or anything that you figured out during your elimination diet that digests very well for you. You can combine a little bit of whey protein or flavored essential amino acids or flavored collagen protein to kind of mask the taste of chicken and oatmeal or chicken and a cream of rice. Right? So you get a little bit of a flavor to get it down easily. And then you add something like papaya or pineapple, which contain natural enzymes that help break down protein. So you got the breakdown of the protein covered, and then you need something to break down the carbohydrates. Now, ideally, you go with something that digests very, very easily for you, like cream of rice or overcooked sweet potato, for example, which is actually very easy to blend. When you cook sweet potato, usually it takes about 30 minutes, 40 minutes to cook it fully. But if you continue to cook it, you actually break down some of the starches which are within the sweet potato, turning it into simple sugars which are easily to digest. So you blend all of this together, the flavored protein powder, the chicken, the carbohydrate sources, and exclude the fat source. In this context, you don't want to add any fat to your diet, any added fats, because that slows digestion. And you don't want anything that slows digestion if you have to eat a ton of food. You don't want to add too many vegetables, maybe limit it to 50 grams per meal, because again, that slows digestion, is extra fiber, adding bulk and volume to the meal that you have to eat. So you want to optimize each meal, ideally liquid, so you can slam it down and don't have to go through the chewing process of eating 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 calories of food, right? If you want to really get big, you're going to have to eat like you mean it. So when you're at those calorie counts, every meal is basically a 1,000 calorie meal, and you need to optimize your digestion. So you need to make these meals as easy to consume as possible by blending it so you don't have to chew, by adding in digestive enzymes which are relevant for the food that you're eating. So you don't go with a broad spectrum super enzyme formula which contain a ton of different enzymes that you're not going to utilize during that meal because they're specific for milk, for example, which all bodybuilders should avoid, because milk equals pimples in the large majority of us. Add some apple cider vinegar, add some betaine hydrochloride with pepsin, which all helps to break down this meal. Swallow that thing in 5 minutes or less, and then you have more time to take care of all the other things that you need to do for the sake of bodybuilding, like going to the gym and doing your injections and getting a ton of naps and taking all of your supplements, right? Don't spend so much time consuming foods. Yes, there's something to say for chewing your food as long as possible because your mouth releases digestive enzymes that help to break down food. So there's a little bit of discrepancy here. You can either go through all of the chewing, which will help with the digestion of this meal, or slam it whole and add some digestive enzymes in the form of pepsin or coming from papaya or pineapple if your diet allows it, which again, we're in the off season, so you should be able to consume some fruit here and there. And I believe that 50 grams of papaya or 50 grams of pineapple per meal, that's, let's say, 350 grams of papaya or 350 grams of pineapple over the day, spaced out over 6 or 7 meals. That should get the job done quite well. Then during the day, you stick with easy to digest protein and carbohydrate sources that you either have to chew in the form of a meal or blend into shakes. Then at the end of the day, you add your healthy fats before bed. This also helps to slow down the breakdown of your last meal, allowing you to get an influx of amino acids and carbohydrates while you're sleeping. So instead of having fats with meals, which slows digestion, you move all of your added fats to the end of the day. But this also means you're going to bed with a full stomach. And if you suffer from sleep apnea, sleeping with a full stomach will make your sleep apnea way worse because now you're compressing your breathing with your thick muscular chest and your thick neck, but you're also compressing and compromising your breathing from the bottom because your food is literally pressing against your diaphragm. So I really hope that you don't suffer from terrible sleep apnea. If you do, make sure you have a CPAP machine. But if you find that you're still waking up gasping for air or you have horrible sleep quality, then you might have to limit the calories and the overall food volume to a point where you still feel comfortable and you can get your sleep in because, well, without quality sleep, you're not going to grow no matter how much drugs you take or how much food you eat. So you have to find a nice balance that works for you. You don't have to do a mass blast of 9 days and gain 20 pounds of fluids. You can gain 20 pounds of actual muscle if you're patient and fix your digestion and just give yourself a larger time frame so you can actually sleep while you're eating a ton of food. Now, on the topic of drugs, answering Rest and Relaxation's 2057's question, there's a couple options at our disposal. The most easy to go with is MK677, but the issue is with chronic and frequent use of MK677, especially when you're in a chronic caloric surplus, insulin sensitivity becomes an issue the longer you take it and the more food you eat, obviously. So another point to increase your appetite is to make sure that you always stay insulin sensitive and keep your skeletal muscle only glycogen loaded at, let's say, 95%. You don't fill out 100%, which actually reduces insulin sensitivity, and now you're backlogged in the bloodstream, which also means that your stomach is going to absorb less and less carbohydrates because there's too much in the bloodstream. So ideally, you keep your insulin sensitivity as high as possible, doing 10-minute walks, doing some daily fasted cardio, doing some high volume workouts. You get your hypertrophy out of the way, and then you do a little bit of glycogen depleting at the end in the form of an FST7 superset, for example, which actually helps to shuttle more nutrients in. Now, if you take MK677 and you can actually manage your insulin sensitivity in your fasting blood glucose levels are not going alarmingly high within the first week of use. If you can sustain this, it's actually very beneficial to use. Commonly used dosages are about 25 to 30 milligrams MK677 before bed, ideally around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the evening, so it can help with growth hormone secretion while you're sleeping. Again, growth hormone secretion is not going to be optimal while you have a full stomach, because somatostatin will down-regulate growth hormone secretion when there's a ton of food in your stomach. Again, ideally you want to be fasted, which is almost impossible when you're eating for mass. You are probably never in a fasted state. Maybe you can take MK677 upon waking, but then you're missing this growth hormone spike, which occurs around midnight, around 2 or 3 in the morning. So dosing is a little bit difficult. Again, make sure you stay on top of your insulin sensitivity. Maybe you can run it for 2 weeks and then take 1 week off to reset your insulin sensitivity and then start it again. But ideally, you go by your fasting blood glucose level, so make sure you have a glucometer to keep track of that. As soon as you wake up with a fasting blood glucose level over 100 milligrams per deciliter, it's time to discontinue the MK677. Now, I feel that GHRP6, which is also a growth hormone secretagogue, might be more beneficial than MK677 because you can dose that right before meals, increasing your appetite for that particular meal. Now, this has a way shorter active life. The growth hormone secretion is not as stellar as you see with MK677 because MK677 has a much longer active life, longer than a day. So you see that growth hormone secretion and IGF-1 levels are generally higher when using MK677 compared to the commonly recommended dosages of 300 micrograms GHRP6, even if that's in combination with 1 to 2 milligrams CJC1295 with the drug affinity complex to make it longer lasting. You might be able to dose GHRP6 once or twice per day alongside MK677 to really boost your appetite. But what I see with a lot of individuals, so let's say you dose the MK677 in the evening, you start to notice that it is weaning off later in the day and you really need to get your last meal in. Maybe GHRP6 when you're close to in a fasted state, so your somatostatin levels are not too high. 300 micrograms, sub-Q or IM, whatever you prefer, should allow you to eat the last meal of the day. So those two options are actually quite good to raise your appetite. Of course, there's boldenone, which are known to increase your appetite. Injectable B12, which is known to increase your appetite. Then you have periactin, which is a antihistamine, first-generation antihistamine, which bodybuilders have used for decades now. Commonly used dosages are 4 milligrams, 8 milligrams if required. I think 4 milligrams periactin upon waking alongside MK677, boldenone, vitamin B12, and perhaps another shot of GHRP6 later in the day. I think that's more than enough to really boost your appetite to food coma levels. But the major downside of periactin, and trust me, there's a million different side effects of periactin, so please read the medical insert before you even consider using this antihistamine to boost your appetite, is drowsiness and sleepiness. Now, most bodybuilders that eat for size are already drowsy and sleepy because of the pharmacology involved and all of the food that's involved. And this will really make you sleepy all day. And if you thought that larger dosages of growth hormone make you sleepy, periactin makes you borderline narcoleptic. You almost are ready to sleep at any point during the day. Way worse than ketotifen, which is another antihistamine used to upregulate the beta-2 adrenergic receptors when using clenbuterol for longer periods of time. This is next level sleepiness. And if you decide to go with this route, I really hope that you invested in Bitcoin early or you have some mining farm or another form of passive income, because you'll be way too sleepy to work. And during your waking hours, you'll either be eating or training or doing injections, right? So keep that in mind. Now, on the topic of mirtazapine, which is a non-typical antidepressant, it's not exactly like a serotonin reuptake inhibitor or a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. Technically, mirtazapine, also known as Remeron, which is the brand name, is a noradrenergic and specific serotonergic antidepressant, abbreviated to NASSA. Works through different pathways as generally prescribed antidepressants, but from what I've seen around me, people that have used the Remeron, there's still an increasing period and a weaning off period if they want to discontinue it. Now, with periactin, for example, or Megestrol Acetate, you could simply start and discontinue. But antidepressants are a little bit more cumbersome and a far lengthier process to use these, let's say, responsibly. Now again, many of the antidepressants are out there that have known side effects resulting in weight gain. So if you do want to go this route, I would rather look into something like fluvoxamine, which is also an antidepressant which has as a side effect weight gain. But most of the people that I talk to that are running fluvoxamine don't really gain weight. If anything, they learn how to control their appetite better because they're in a better state of mood. It is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor after all. So if you want to go with the antidepressant route, I would rather look into fluvoxamine, which is known to stimulate neurogenesis quite potentially. The mirtazapine I would keep as a last resort, but honestly, guys, there's much better solutions out there to stimulate your appetite. So for now, I would say that Remeron mirtazapine does not have my seal of approval in the context of increasing one's appetite for your bodybuilding purposes. And on the topic of Megestrol Acetate, which might have some practical applications, albeit that I've never used it myself or know anybody that has used Megestrol Acetate to stimulate their metabolism. Know plenty of guys who've used MK677, GHRP6, boldenone, vitamin B12 injections, or in this case, periactin. But Megestrol Acetate, from the research that I've done, it might have some practical applications. Just keep in mind that Megestrol Acetate is a progestin, so you might get some progestin-like and related side effects. I do see that Megestrol Acetate has weak androgenic activity as well as glucocorticoid activity, but no other hormonal activity. It's also been linked to reduce sex hormone production. And keep in mind that progestins are often used in birth control tablets, and in the case of Testosterone, Ment was actually designed as a male contraceptive. So that's something you have to keep in mind. This is not something you can use as a drug-free athlete, but the funny thing is, Megestrol Acetate in combination with testosterone treatment or nandrolone treatment has actually been investigated in cases of muscle wasting diseases. Now, the evidence is quite thin. It's not very conclusive. It's certainly not very applicable to bodybuilders. I would rather go with anecdotal evidence. So here's your opportunity, Vigorous Crew. If you've used Megestrol Acetate to boost your appetite, let us know down below in the comment section. I would love to hear about it. Because, well, there's always somebody out there who needs an appetite boost. And maybe if the anecdotal experience from you guys is good, and then maybe then I can give my seal of approval for the use of Megestrol Acetate to boost one's appetite during the off season when you're already eating a ton of foods, but only if I've tried this compound myself, right? I only talk from personal experience. So from now it looks promising. Let me know in the comment section if you tried it. I think that pretty much covers everything that you need to know about boosting one's appetite besides the use of insulin and thyroid medication. Again, that's a little bit more cumbersome all by itself. I would advise you guys to do your due diligence researching before you use a long-acting insulin to boost your appetite or use a replacement dose or slightly higher dose of T3 by themselves or in combination. Because these two compounds, especially if your IGF-1 levels are somewhat elevated through exogenous use or the use of growth hormone or MK677 or GHRP6, these bioidentical hormones all regulate nutrient partitioning and nutrient absorption. So ideally, right, you want to have a fast lane from your mouth into skeletal muscle, and optimizing this fast lane from the mouth to skeletal muscle is how you improve your appetite. And you make sure that there's no limiting factor. So your digestion has to be on par. Your ability to consume food has to be optimized. Your ability to digest this food has to be optimized. The rate at which this food, this digested food, enters the intestinal tract and how it passes through the intestinal tract, that has to be optimized. Your liver health needs to be optimized, as well as the functioning of your gallbladder. You have to make sure that your blood glucose and all of your nutrient partitioning, which occurs in the bloodstream, is optimized. And then last, but certainly not least, you have to make sure that all of these nutrients and these calories have somewhere to go. So if your skeletal muscle is full, your insulin sensitivity is going to be reduced, and all of these extra nutrients are going to spill over into adipose tissue or stay floating around in the bloodstream, making you blind in the long term, right? So you have to optimize all of that. It's basically a full-time job, But if you treat it like a full-time job, you should be able to eat a mountain of foods, train for hours and hours, well, not hours, but at least a long portion of time with pretty high volume and high intensity too, and recover from it, right? Optimize everything for perfect digestion so you can eat for mass, so you too can end up in a triple XL class. Just give yourself some time. Don't set 9 days aside to eat a ton of foods. Do it for a decade. I'll leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the description section. Have a look at my sponsors and affiliates, all the companies that I'm associated with. I have discount codes for all of them so you can save yourself some money in the process while shopping online. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at VigorSteve. Vigorous Crew, you guys know what to do. A front double bicep for you guys. I think these cannons look a little bit soft, so maybe I need to boost my appetite a little bit further. Already eating 4,000 calories per day, not using any performance-enhancing drugs besides the IV treatment that I'm doing. So yeah, I'm just getting fat, and I get a decent pump in the gym though. So maybe in the future I'm going to have to change that. Stay tuned for blood work at the end of this month. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And don't eat too much in the meantime.